How's it going, everyone? Well, I wanted to speak with Janice Fiamengo one-on-one interview style like this for some time. I know, Janice, I've spoken to you back in ICMI 2021. We did a live Q&A and everything. That was with Chris Bodie. And we've had some trouble trying to get this put together, right? It's been a few months in the making. There's always been something that delayed us, you know. How have you been?
Pretty good. Yeah, I'm all right. How about you?
But quite right. The hurricane didn't hit us so bad, actually.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Where are you exactly?
Winter Haven. So it's pretty. The results kind of varied. You know, some people never lost power. Some people didn't have power for about a week, but ours got resolved in about 25 hours. So
still, that's yeah, significant.
Yeah. All right. So as this has been a couple months in the making, I've compiled like some interesting subjects for us to talk about, and we've been kind of piling these on. So let's start with something as early as July. You spoke about radical feminist Christina Ellingson, and talked about how conservatives kind of seem to play white knight with those people and kind of ally with feminists just to own the trans people. Can you say more on that?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for conservatives who feel very strongly that they need to ally themselves with these TERFs or radical feminists, anti-trans feminists. I'm sure many of them just feel that the biological truth of gender is something that needs to be, I don't know, asserted and defended, and I agree with them. And
Sure.
a lot of these, but it does, I have to say first, it drives me crazy to see especially conservative commentators, both men and women, but men actually in particular, who are in general anti-feminist or at least non-feminist, skeptical of feminist claims, and then to see them embracing these particular anti-trans feminists as heroes, and particularly I was thinking in the article I wrote on my Substack page was Tucker Carlson, who interviewed this woman Christina Ellingson, who's a Norwegian radical feminist, and he called her a hero for her I guess, I mean, he sees her as standing up for truth, in that she has been charged with hate speech. I don't know what's happened with that case since I wrote about it. She had been charged with hate speech in Norway for harassing a trans person, or maybe multiple trans people, on Twitter. And so he called her a hero and had this adulatory short interview with her. And I've seen him do this on numerous occasions with anti-trans feminists. I've seen this amongst other conservative commentators as well. And I certainly agree with people like Tucker Carlson that biological truth is very important, although it's so ironic to see him congratulating a feminist, given that it has been feminism that has denied the biological truth of sex difference for at least 50 years. And you can see that very clearly if you go back in the feminist literature. So it's pretty ironic to see him now championing this woman as some sort of defender of free speech, and also of, yeah, biological common sense or common sense social norms, whatever it happens to be. And I agree that I do agree that it's unfair that female athletes should be competing against biological males. I agree that it's kind of crazy that biological males should be coming into girls' change rooms or washrooms, and that I heard just recently about a case in Vermont where a number of girls were worried by a trans person's presence, someone who has a penis and is there in a change room, and they've all been told, the girls have been told that they will have to change elsewhere in order to accommodate this person. And so I agree that these are issues of concern, but the fact of the matter is that radical feminism, in my view, poses a far greater crisis in our society. It's a far greater threat to decency and cultural sanity than the very small percentage of people who believe they were born in the wrong body and wish to live as the opposite sex. And the whole rhetoric that has developed around, especially male to female trans people, that these are somehow patriarchal aggressors who wish to usurp female bodies and female spaces, and this is simply the latest example of patriarchal oppression of women, and therefore, you know, it has to be championed as a women's issue. I find that ludicrous. I know that there are some very aggressive trans activists, but as far as I know, and I don't claim any expertise certainly, but as far as I know, most trans women simply want to live as women. They don't hate women. I mean, they want to be women.
Right.
They don't want.
They don't necessarily want to be a predator or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there are some predators out there who will seize on this opportunity, but that is not the vast majority, as far as I can tell, of trans women. And to claim that they represent a patriarchal urge to dominate women, which is now the standard feminist line about them, is just ludicrous. And it's also ludicrous to see these anti-trans feminists claiming that they now defend women's sex-based rights. They claim they stand for biological truth. They claim they stand for freedom of speech. They claim to care about equality. They've never cared about any of these things. They have championed the usurpation of male spaces over the past, whatever, 40 years. You know, the ironies. They don't care about free speech for men. These are the most radical feminists out there, the most hateful feminists propelled by anti-male animus. They're all in favor of men being kicked off Twitter or whatever social platform merely for saying things that feminists don't like. They claim that men just having free speech rights makes women feel unsafe. And so now the shoe is at last on the other foot. And they're the ones that can't speak freely. They're the ones that can't simply state biological truths. They're the ones that are being told they're harmful and that they harm people merely by their, you know, presence on Twitter and their free speech. And so it's hard not to see a delicious irony in it all. And I really wish that conservatives like Tucker Carlson would ask these anti-trans feminists some tough questions about what they actually believe and why they support hateful ideologues like Julie Bindel, you know, who's written an article called "Why I Hate Men." Thanks, you know, that's great. That's allowed, but now she's outraged that some people hate her. Sheila Jeffries is another example. Megan Murphy, who may not be as well known, she's a Canadian feminist here in Vancouver, who suddenly became a champion of free speech when she was shut down, but meanwhile had run Feminist Currents, an anti-male, you know, feminist website for years that made its entire raison d'etre to be making hateful generalizations about men. She proposed that men should have to live under a curfew since they couldn't be stopped from abusing women, you know, all sorts of just crazy, irrational claims. And she was allowed to get away with that, and is now shocked that in a different kind of context, suddenly her speech rights have been, her freedom has been curtailed.
Exactly. Like one person that's coming immediately to mind is Jermaine Greer, kind of talking about in the present day, talking about the biological reality, men can't be women, etc. But if I remember correctly, it was in one of her books. I'm kind of getting this information secondhand, but it might have been The Female Eunuch or something else. But she basically said that there's nothing actually feminine about motherhood and giving birth. She made claims such as that. Somebody can please verify me on this one, but yeah, it's the hypocrisy that's kind of, you know, it's working against them now. So now they have to reassert and claim that womanhood is being erased women, as they would say.
Yes, I mean, it really is. It's one of the most extraordinary examples of hypocrisy that one can find, I think, in the modern world. I haven't reread The Female Eunuch now I haven't read it for 20 years, so I wouldn't want to say anything specific about that. But I recently reread Kate Millett's Sexual Politics. And it's exactly the same thing. And all these feminists were essentially making the same sorts of claims. And Millett she has a long introductory chapter to that book called Theory of Sexual Politics. And she states repeatedly that there is she says at one point that the best medical evidence now points to the reality that there is no biological basis to gender at all. And that even differences in male musculature, which she had to kind of acknowledge did exist, but that even those differences were not biological. They were based on, she said, breeding, whatever that means.
Wait, breeding and biology, what's the difference here?
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe the idea was that, I don't know. I mean, she didn't elaborate. I could only guess that maybe like dogs are bred for certain qualities that somehow.
Yeah, but that's still biology, though.
That's still biology. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. But she also said, and I've seen this in numerous feminist treatises. She also said that it has to do with like diet and like cultural conditioning in terms of parents supposedly encouraging their male children to be more active, encouraging their male children to eat more meat, giving their male children larger, food helpings, all of this unconscious sexism working to create, I mean, and that passed. That was 1970. And it wasn't really new at that point. This was the age of a lot of pronouncements in the field of sexology. That fellow John Money, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but
John Money. Monet. That's
is it? Oh, Monet. Okay, I pronounced it wrong in my most recent video that's coming out. But he was making he and his colleagues were making these sorts of claims, supposedly through their work with intersex patients. They were claiming that gender is completely separate from chromosomes or anything else. And that was the standard feminist position, and anybody who objected to it was some kind of bigot and patriarchal oppressor. And so now suddenly we're supposed to not notice that a lot of feminists have gone back to a pre-1970 acceptance of the reality of biological sex. And of course, you can change your mind about things. I'd like to be able to change my mind about things that I'm wrong about, but I don't see any admission that, like, they won't take responsibility for the fact that they were the ones that really pushed this claim about the social construction of gender. They also won't follow now their claims that women are weaker than men and need to be protected from man, etc. From trans women rather. They won't follow up the logical conclusions of those claims. So are they now going to recognize that forcing women into positions as firefighters, as police officers, in the military, that all of that's been going on for the last 20 years or so, and it's been really aggressively pursued, are they going to admit that is actually detrimental to society, and that the claim that women could take on the role of firefighting with no danger to those who might be relying on them in a particular crisis, are they going to admit that that's a lie and stop rolling back some of these affirmative action demands that they've been making? And are they going to at last admit that yes, men and women are different in all sorts of spheres, have different capacities, different talents, different interests, and that accounts for a great deal of the gender disparity that we can observe in our society, and stop claiming that that's sexism? And I don't see that they are going to do that. So right. The selectivity with which they push their claims is evident, I would think, for anyone with eyes to see, and yet still somehow doesn't really seem to get called out or even noticed in the larger society.
Exactly. The exact phrasing I've heard described by the average casual feminist, not even the so-called radical ones, but casual feminists, is that men can have the scraps. You know, like when it comes to like dirty jobs, like
Yeah.
yeah, garbage men and janitors and everything like that. You know, feminists want and these feminists want the glamorous jobs, but none of the dirty work.
They actually admit that, do they? I've
Yeah,
never seen that. Wow. Yeah. That, I mean, it is clear from the kinds of pronouncements they make that that's what is believed, but I've never seen it admitted to that extent. But I think that is the feminist vision now of the future, is that women will be in all the positions of administration and governance and decision making, because they've pushed this idea that women are superior decision makers. We saw that so intensely during COVID, over and over, articles claiming that women made better leaders, women were allegedly more compassionate, they took steps more quickly to protect populations, you know, all those kinds of things. Men were dangerous because men wouldn't wear masks, men wouldn't stay in lockdown. Men objected more vociferously to being forced to take COVID vaccines and all those kinds of things, and that men were therefore a danger to the greater good, and they should be deprived of any kind of power of decision making. Yeah, and so that is, I think, the vision, that men will do the dirty work. Certainly, they'll keep on doing the dangerous jobs, but women will make all the decisions, and supposedly that'll create a better world.
exactly. Beware of the woman who says, "I'm the brains, you're the brawn."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.